Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to be doing a Chessable ebook review on Sharp Middlegames, a practical guide to chess calculation by Grandmaster Daniel Gormally. And if you enjoy that video, hit that like button down below. And if you want to support the channel, check out my Patreon links also down below. Okay, check out this review. Okay, in today's video, I'm going to do a quick review of a Chessable ebook that I actually had the opportunity to beta test. So I was able to go through and study it as well as give some suggestions on improving it. Mainly grammatical, sometimes typos, so nothing in terms of the chess content really, except for maybe suggesting a little more explanation in a couple of the positions. But in any case, Sharp Middlegames, a practical guide to chess calculation. This is a course by Grandmaster Danny Gormally. I may not have heard me mention him too much. I've only discovered his books a little more recently, but he's a British Grandmaster. And I discovered him actually, he was interviewed on the Perpetual Chess podcast, and I thought it was a very interesting interview. I think he's a very interesting fellow. But let me get right into the book and what you can expect to find. He does have a little intro video here, but generally, it's about some practical techniques on how to calculate and how to find good moves in sharp and complex positions. So he uses techniques like the process of elimination, which he talks about, um, how to recognize and handle critical moments, and a couple that aren't on here. Talks the chapter that I spent my most time on was targets, and so finding targets and then how to arrange your pieces to attack those targets. And what you have here, what's unique about Chessable is that not only is it a chess book where you can read the games and the examples, but it actually will quiz you and force you to use the moves, which is always good. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the, I'll just show you the chapters real quick here. We have, as I mentioned before, the process of elimination, check yourself, weaponizing memory, finding targets, and escalation. And you still, I've done about a third of the book, mainly the chapter that I beta tested as well as the first chapter, but they seem fairly consistent in the writing style. And let me go ahead and open up this chapter. And what's nice about this particular book, each Chessable book or any chess book in general has its own format. But what this one does is after a brief introduction, there are a bunch of quiz positions, and you need to try to solve these. What I would do if I were you is set these up on a chessboard and really try to treat it like a tournament game. I think that's how you get the most bang for your buck. But what the problems are various moves from a particular game involving, as the title would suggest, a sharp middle game. And some of these uh, positions, and let me just go ahead and I'll overstudy one here so you can see the types of positions we're looking at here. So in this particular position, the question is, we need to find a way to start breaking down black's position. Can you find it? And here we see that black has some structural issues here. We can see white's king is also a little loose, but in these types of positions, it's often beneficial to try to break through to the king side. And actually, I've seen this problem already, so the answer is here to play h4. But you needed to kind of identify the positional aspect, which is the structural weaknesses around black's king and our ability, and be able to assess the ability to bring our forces over. Now, the next exercises, let me just go ahead to the next one to tell you what I'm talking about. So if we go over to the exercise right afterwards, and we take a look at it, here we see this position, which is a couple moves after the one we just did, and it's continuing this theme. We need to continue the attack. And you can look at various different candidate moves, and you want to, again, try to find the best move. And in this case, the idea here is to continue to focus on this kingside structure. Play here h5, and then after we break through here, we are going to we're going to open up the H file and do our attack. Okay, so those are the types of positions. Again, I already studied these particular positions, so I knew the answers. But if you can see, you're going to be able to break down positions and actually play through it. It's like having, with the comments and the different sub variations and analysis, it's like having Grandmaster Gormally sitting with you and teaching you chess. And then what happens is after you finish all the problems, you can actually scroll down here, or I'll scroll down here, and we actually see the game in full. So if I click on this, for example, we can uh, read it just like a regular chess book. However, the added benefit here is that having already solved the problems, we have I think, an intimate understanding of the tactical and positional nuances in the position already. So that helps to deepen our learning. Plus, if you continue to review the positions, as I have, for example, using Chessable's spaced repetition algorithm, those patterns and those methods will be burned into your memory, and that understanding, you're going to be able to apply those in your games. Okay, one of the things I liked about this book is Grandmaster Gormally's prose, his writing style. He's very humorous. He's very honest. He has a few of his games here, and actually, let me see if I can find an interesting example of that for you. Here is an example just of this very honest and very interesting writing. I'm just going to read this segment here. And this is from his game against British superstar Michael Adams. Here, I was, look on the position that he's talking about here. Right here. Okay. I was really annoyed that I didn't get around to checking this move because it's a very natural response. When I was analyzing this position, I got distracted and fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up and had forgotten all about h6. When Adams played h6, it was important to consider what my other options are because now my idea of going bishop to g5 doesn't work. So I'm faced with an important decision how to complete my development while at the same time preventing my opponent from becoming too active because he clearly has the plan of playing bishop to g7, try to attack the e pawn directly, and undermine my d5 pawn with d6 to break my center. I may have underestimated how critical my position already was because I played knight to d2 here, but this is where I needed to think deeply about the position and not just a routine move. And I found this it was both humorous and instructive. And these types of segments are written throughout the book. And so I really enjoyed that. And sometimes when you are studying chess, especially these very analytical positions, you can get bogged down with it. But then when you read entertaining instruction like this, it helps to keep you motivated. So that was, I thought, a big strength of the book. Okay, one of the other features of the Chessable uh, ebook here is that we don't only look at the view from the winning side, but we also look when white does in this particular position. This is from the game that from the first example, Morizovic versus Peterson. That if white, in the context of the notes, you'll see something like, white has to continue his attack vigorously. Um, and here's an example where white kind of makes a slow building up move, and Chessable will quiz you and say, well, what can black do to create counterplay here? Let me just show you this position. Here, as we saw earlier, we have pressure on white's king side. And as we saw in the one example, white should have played h4 to h5 earlier. And if white tries to build up the attack slowly with rook to h2, well, black can now counterattack and create some complications himself here. Queen takes a4, and now this h5 comes just a move too late because now we can kind of shut down the attack here. We're attacking this knight, attempting to trade off queens, and then white will find that he doesn't have enough firepower to break through. So the nice thing about it from a training aspect, and it's really teaching you to not just look at your opportunities, but really understand how black is going to get back into. So there's a lot of that where you have quizzes on both sides so that you really understand how. And that's what makes these sharp positions, is that there's play for both sides. So your moves have to be very accurate, and you have to be very efficient. So this is not a um, it's not just an attacking book. There are a few kind of more defensive type positions that involve a lot of calculation, which is very important as well. But it isn't uh, necessarily a. It's kind of tough because it's not a pure strategy book. It's not like a tactics problem book. It really is. How do you assess sharp middle games? How do you think in sharp middle games? And then with Chessable, it's going to quiz you. Then you either get it right or you get it wrong, and then you analyze and kind of compare your thought process to the annotation by Grandmaster Gormally. And it really, I found, is helping me to think a little more deeply and a little more thoroughly in my own games so far. And I really think that it is a really, really nice book. Now, just to finish up here, okay, just a couple more thoughts on the book. I really, well, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very well written in terms of game selection. Grandmaster Gormley also includes a few of his own games, which is very valuable as a student because you actually see what did he think during the game, including some of his mistakes, as I mentioned in reading that excerpt. And that's really what I'm finding in it. And this is kind of this transition from fuzzy, avoiding blunder type calculations, along with strategic understanding to really much more concrete play. I think at a certain point in your chess development, in order to move to that next level, you need to be much more accurate with your calculations. You can't just rely on intuition and strategic knowledge. And even the great strategic players of history, like Anatoly Karpov, for example, or Petrosian, they were incredible tacticians, incredible calculators, and and even today, Magnus Carlsen, even though he's known as a positional defensive player, for example, obviously he's very good at all phases of the game. So with this book, I think it really helps make that transition, at least for me. With that in mind, I do recommend it for kind of intermediate and above players. Grandmaster Gormley, in his conversations in the forums at Chessable, say he didn't intend it for it to be an advanced book, but when you're talking about the sharp middle games, the selections he chose were very difficult. They're not; these aren't just tactics problems. They are really teaching you how to handle these sharp middle. So I would say recommend cautiously 1500 and above, and uh, I think that will help you again form this more concrete calculations in your game. Highly recommend it for that. So check that out. I'll have a link in the notes below. If you are less than 1500, I do recommend continuing with the training your own tactics and studying master games, of course, and so that you can get up to being able to take advantage of this book. And with that in mind, I want to just point out over here my review of 1001 uh, chess exercises for beginners. I did a review of it a few months ago, and I think I still do the problems from there as well because they're very fundamental to chess tactics. So with that in mind, check out that video if you want to look at that review, and otherwise check out Sharp Middle Games. Danny Gormally, a great book, and I will talk to you next time.